Hello, everybody. I'll say this as I said in some of my lives on Facebook and on here. If you're feeling fragile or squishy about things, you're probably not going to want to listen to me. And not because I'm going to say things that are necessarily offensive on their own, but because they might touch your core wounds. Because that's the path I'm on right now. I'm speaking my mind, I'm taking up space, and I am allowing myself to only hold space for those who are treating me with equal respect, equal appreciation. Because that's what the whole world wants, right? Equality. Yes. I'm also doing this because my parents are upset at me. Because I'm no longer allowing the condition that as long as they throw money at me, that they can mistreat me or my children. Or even themselves or each other. There's the kicker, right? Standing up for them, and myself and my kids pisses them the fuck off because they've been so kind to me. Yeah, because I'm just like the type of person that would just randomly just start not appreciating things. Yeah. It's funny because it seems like a lot of the world is like that right now. They want to be, everybody wants to be able to point out everyone else's flaws and say, oh, but I was put upon, or everybody's too busy, or I'm going through something really hard. And it's like, yeah, I have empathy for that. But why are you laying that on me when I'm in my own space talking about my own feelings? And yes, requesting support, not advice, support in the path forward as I take it. Not only because I know that that's the right thing to do, but also because it's my favorite life experience so far that pretty much everybody, the wisest, the least wise, the richest, the poorest, the healthiest, the sickest, will all tell you the same thing. Do what is best for you, always. And if people don't meet your conditions if they don't give you the kind of attention you want, if they don't behave in a way that society expects them to behave, take away all your love, take away all your attention, take away your approval. And the greatest irony to all of that is when you find that you have allowed yourself to be around people who both tell you that and then do not practice that themselves in their lives, and they get mad at you when you don't practice it in theirs, and you realize that's not a healthy relationship to have, then they get mad at you when you say, you know what, I need to release you too, especially if I'm going to take your advice. That's funny. My parents are back. There's a church parking lot behind us. So a thing just happened this morning. I had it out with my parents last night, first of all, because my dad likes to blame me for every problem that happens in the world. And the same thing with my mom, especially anything around the house. With zero accountability that maybe part of the reason for that is because how I had to grow up, which was pretty much being abused every day at a sitter's because, as my mom said, she had no choice because my dad was an alcoholic. He was busy doing that stuff. And so my mom was also a workaholic too. He did that also. And they would constantly bicker with each other and fight all the time. And then suddenly it stopped and they would only tell everybody else what their problems were. So I decided I've had enough of that. I'm tired of hearing about how my dad never does anything and hearing about how my mom's so upset about how 25 years ago he did not give her 15 minutes of attention at a dinner, and so she's forever holding a grudge with him and going to forever tell me about it rather than him, rather than trying to do it. And when you bring it up to her, she says, I tried. And then you say, well, why don't you divorce him? Like, they're pretty old now. Like, I get that, but that's been my advice the whole time. If he makes you so miserable, why don't you divorce him and choose to be happy? Called my mom out the other day on like everything she does is, well, I'll do it because nobody else is going to do it, when usually people were planning to do it and she was bored and she wanted something to do. So she decided to take that on, but she decides to choose to do it miserably. So I've just been pointing that out. Do you have to be so miserable about it? My dad came in and asked her the other day in the kitchen if she wanted to go get dinner with him. Something that I asked him to do because she complains that he never does nice stuff like that. I heard him doing it. I was in the bathroom. I came out. I heard her complaining about all of it. And I said, you know, you could at least pretend that you care and that it makes you happy that he cares while he's standing right there in front of you and right there behind you. And then last night, this is so funny. I don't even know what they're doing. So last night, I went to my dad and I said, you know, I tried it kindly. I said, I'd appreciate it if you would stop blaming me or assuming that I am the cause of all things. The challenge is with the car that we have, or that they have. It had a problem the other day. I reached out to a friend who was kind enough to help me get AAA to tow it back to the house so that there was no further problems with it. Any thank you? No. Any acknowledgement that that was a smart idea? No, no whatsoever. Though when he took it to the mechanic and brought it back, as per usual, it was my fault because 15 months ago, while I was very emotional and going through a whole bunch of stuff, I would go and sit in the car and let it run so I was warm. And he believes that every problem in that car is now the cause of the fact that I did idle in it for a while. And let's just ignore the fact that I have 10 years of hands on experience as a mechanic, including having worked in a Corvette shop for a while, a specialty shop. But I don't know anything about mechanics. And of course, in his mind, I could not possibly have, I don't know, heard him the first dozen times and actually listened. Yes, there's some more idling that happens while I go do door dashing, or maybe when I'm sitting in the car getting my phone plugged in and my seatbelt on. Yes, of course, there's some idling. Though, could my dad possibly believe that maybe the car is getting older and that the problem that he described that it has really has very little to do with idling? No, of course not. And when I simply say, I would appreciate some respect for the amount of actual experience that I have with cars that I'm pretty sure you don't have. Do you? And he goes, ugh. And I said, did you work on mechanics in the Navy? I know that you've worked on things like fan belts and stuff like that, but as far as I know, I've never seen you actually work on an internal combustion engine like innards to outwards, etc. And he didn't like that. And usually in my family, then you just huff off, right? So I said, you know, you would not like it if I blamed every problem in this world that I have on the fact that you chose to be an alcoholic throughout most of my life, or the fact that you would have beat me several times that you blacked out if it weren't for the hoarded mess all over the house from you and mom. You would not like that. That would not be appreciated, would it? And he just went back to ignoring me. And I said, you know, you guys talked about, you know, your family, you all want to get rid of me. You want to keep my children for whatever fucking reason that you complain about that you are far too old to be taken care of in the first place, and you want me to go. And you guys tried to bribe me to do it because who fucking knows? It's your fucking drama. I turned it down because I wanted to have more stability. I wanted to have a plan. I have a plan. Actually, it's a great fucking plan. It would be stable so me and my children don't have to either be at the whims and wills of pirates, like them and others, but so that we could actually go, you know what, let's settle in here and do that. I turned down like 5 grand worth of money from my family for that reason and because I didn't want the strings attached to it. Because the way it works in my family is we give you money and you never complain about the way we abuse you. That's how it works. Now, then I went to my mom because she's been reading this book about when adult children break your heart. Like, you know what? It does fucking happen, but you're the first person to complain about moms like that. And now you're being a mom like that. You go ahead and read it, but if you're going to feel that me calling attention to the fact that you made some inappropriate choices in your life that you could very, very simply go to therapy for so that you can own everything that is yours and not own all the shit that is not yours, because that's what you do. You take on everybody else's shit as your fault and none of the shit that is yours. But anyways, I saw her sitting there glaring at me because I spoke a truth. And I said, again, you and your sister talked about pushing me out of the house because we're such problems to y'all and I just break your heart. So I would appreciate knowing if that help is still going to come or if it was conditional based only on if I was allowing you all to be disrespectful to me. She didn't like that. And it resulted in a fight of me saying, you know, I don't know why you adopted me if this is what you intended to use me for. I don't think that's an appropriate thing. And it really sucks that y'all want me to be accountable, but you take no accountability for anything that you have. And then every day I get to see your disappointed looks, not only in how my life isn't going the way you wanted it to, but how your lives are not. And then she yelled that I'm never accountable for anything. So I looked at her and I said, well, if I've got problems with accountability, guess whose fault that is? That's when she started screaming, no, 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 you're full of shit. So I flipped her off and walked out the door. All things I wanted to do at age 15 when I asked if she would help me get emancipated so that I could be responsible in all the ways that she demanded that I be since I was probably about 4. Grow up, be an adult, be responsible, do all this stuff. At 15, I'd already had like 3 different jobs. I'd started a business in elementary school. I've always been good taking care of myself when it's just me. So I've had children, and I try to think about them. And I'd had other family members. I tried to think about them. When I moved my family back into my parents' house, it was in part because I knew that my kid's dad was already dealing with a boatload more pirates than I was. And so there was a lot of emotional stuff to work on. And I wanted us to go through couples therapy, which we did. The other reason is because my parents are getting older. And despite the fact that my mom completely iced out her dad when he was going, and that my dad didn't help with his dad when he was getting older and helping, I felt like it was important for me to be there for them. And what sucks is like every time I think about how can I approach the situation in a good, kind, healthy way so that we can actually help each other without abusing each other, either intentionally or unintentionally, or as a consequence of getting it, any of it. And I've worked hard at it, especially for the last 22 months, to really even things out, take ownership for all my stuff and everything. And it appears that I've been mostly the only one doing it. And then when I reach out for support from anybody you could expect, therapists, wise people, nice people, mean people, and all of them say, your parents are old, which means they're broken, so you can't get anything fixed. So you saying it is either just for you or you're just being cruel. Well, if that's the truth, and I'm going to get the blame anyways, no matter what I do, and everybody's advice is to do what's best for me and to be conditional with my love, then I'm going to be. At least for right now. But my conditions are not the same as everybody else's, which is part of why it's upsetting everybody. And so this morning, my dad, of course, just the same as usual, let's not acknowledge that there are any problems, says, well, hi, when I came in. So I just, oh, hi, thanks. And I didn't start a conversation with him. I sat down and had my coffee. And he started telling me about how mom was hanging out with a friend up at the church. And I was like, good, good. Because the more she tries to make us the responsibility of all of her feelings, the worse things are going to get. She needs to hang out with her friends. He says, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then he starts talking about the trip they're going to go on. And I've been very clear with all of them. When I ask a question, I want a direct answer. I don't want a 30-minute fucking story before you get me a yes or no answer or a this day, that day sort of answer, especially when you complain that I never listen. So he's been actually doing some of that, which, to everyone who said that they're broken, no. It's just sometimes healing goes in conflict resolution cycles. You can't be afraid of the conflict if you really want healing, right? So I asked him, they're going on a vacation soon. I said, what day are you leaving? He told me. What day are you coming back? He told me. I said, thank you. I was content to stay out of it at that point. But then he wanted to talk about the car that I broke. And then he wanted to talk about the van that I'm sitting in right now that they're going to take. And I said, he started talking about how it was working funny. And I said, Dad, do you have a plan for if you get stuck? Because with the way that the car is working and everything else, there's not a guarantee that I can come pick y'all up. It depends on how far away you are and if the car will get me there. He said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, no, really, you've got mom. She's got a heart condition. You've got a heart condition. And emotionally, you're going to have to prepare for what to do if you got to wait 4 or 5 hours for somebody to help you. Have you talked to your nephew? Have you talked to anybody else that can also help? And he says, I've been talking to the insurance about AAA. I said, okay, but that still includes what I just said, because AAA can often take 4 to 5 hours to come pick you up. I just had it happen the other day. Well, I'll make sure that there's blankets in the car. I said, that's good. That's good. The what about emotionally? This is when he picked up a piece of paper and pretended that he didn't hear me and ran and walked off to his room. I let him. And then I went in there and I said, "Look, I get it. You're not good with emotions. You got male ego and shit going on. But one, I'm tired of hearing that you put a ton of effort into doing stuff with mom and she feels ignored. I know that a lot of that is on mom, though a lot of mom's complaints are that you are not attentive emotionally. I get that you're older. I get that you have this attitude of where we've been married so long, why put in the effort? Here's the deal. I don't want to hear one more complaint from mom about how you sat and watched TV or you did this and that. I know that you're putting in some effort, but this is the place where she's always complained the most. I'm not asking you to be responsible for her happiness, but I am asking you to give a little more." And he starts to go, "Well, I'm trying to call the insurance." I said, "Yeah, okay, so ignore me again. All right, where's my money? And I'll go leave you alone." He said, "Well, what do you want from me?" I said, "I'd like you to actually be able to have a conversation that includes you owning your parts and things where you don't get passive aggressive or walk off or tell me I'm being mean to you." "Well, you're always yelling at me." I said, "I have started raising my voice when y'all are disrespecting me. That is true. I am also trying to get out of here. You guys keep putting traps in the way or trying to turn my kids against me or saying that the help that you would have offered to get me out before, when there shouldn't have been any reason to want to, it was simply because you didn't want to own the stuff in your position and own it with your families and stuff. Now it's not there. Now you're mad that I want to leave. Now you're mad and you don't want to help. Well, okay then. Like, and he got mad and said something to the effect of, "I'm just ungrateful." And I said, "You know what? I'm very grateful for a whole lot of things. So you're right. I am ungrateful for being treated this way in this moment. I will find gratitude for it later because your choices helped show me how not to be with people, and least of all with my kids." And he got more mad and I said, "You know what? Why don't we just go back to what I told you that you would not like? How about we make this all your fault because you can't even own or apologize for the fact that you spent most of my life drunk and mom spent most of it codependently chasing you around with everybody else so that I got beat at the sitters all the time. You did not protect me." And he started shouting at that point. No, I'm not unsurprised. I mean, somebody who's not in a healthy emotional space and doesn't want to look at their stuff is going to be like that. And then he started shouting about how he'll go drive off a cliff so he never has to hear that again. And I said, "Do you see how extreme that is? That's what you were trying to tell my son that I might do because I've been emotional." That's what Donna suggested. She suggested her, my aunt, my son's great aunt, when she felt emotional, that she was going to drink bleach. This is a lot of the shit that Rudy's family does too. In fact, Rudy's the only one that I've met that has not done that. I mean, he's talked about feeling suicidal, though I could understand why. When anybody around you that you try to say, "Hey, I need you to be accountable for your part too." I am not saying I am not responsible for my part. I'm saying you too. I could get why a person might go nuts in that. When everybody goes, "No, no, 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 it's not me, it's you. You're worse, and I don't have to be accountable. And it's you too. No, 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 no." Yeah, I could understand that. But my dad decided that he would run off. And I said, "See, you're sitting there talking about doing something extreme simply because I'm asking you to be accountable for something that's not easy, that you can't just throw money on. Or if you do throw money on it, it's not going to make you feel better." And he kept going. And he said, "You know what? I'm just gonna drive myself off a cliff so that I never have to hear about it. You know what? I'm sorry." And I said, "Are you really?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna drive off a cliff." And I said, "You know, it would be quite peaceful in my life to know that there's no longer anyone there blaming me for all their problems. So you do you." And he left. And then ever since, I'm kind of laughing because I pulled his van out to the front yard because I know their passive aggressive ways. And if it was left in there with all my cars broken, when I have to go pick up my son for school, they're very likely to block me in and then go, "I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about." "We'll go get him. You're unstable." And so I just moved it to the front. And I've been sitting in it. It's comfortable. I like sitting in it. I don't want to waste the gas. I can't have it on because I might idle. So I'm just sitting here peacefully. I figure I'm well away from the house where I'm sitting. That way they can go in and out. They don't have to worry about me. But here's the funny thing. You know what they're doing? Because I could see it in the side mirror. The church that's in front of the house. My dad has been driving around. Like I'm sure he went to pick up mom. I'm sure that they're sitting there complaining about how all of our problems are my fault and how they can possibly try to turn aim against me. Because you know what my mom did with my son last night when I stood up for myself with her. She immediately went to yell at my dad and then went to tell my oldest son that he can't take his pet bird with him if he leaves with me because she can't stop him from going with me. We had to talk about how that's another manipulation and that he doesn't need to worry. For one thing, as they say to everyone else, just emotional. For two, it's not her bird. Not anymore. It was once upon a time, but then it became our aunt's because my mom used to torture that bird. Okay? And then my aunt started taking care of it, and when she died, it went to Eamon because the bird does not like mom. It will attack her. That bird ain't staying with her. She'll take out her shit on that bird. We will take that bird because it will be safer for the bird, even if we're in the car. And we also talked about how people will do that sort of emotional manipulation. If she was really concerned about him, for one thing, she wouldn't go try to hurt his feelings. The reason she said that is because she knows he gets very emotional whenever somebody talks about him not being able to have the bird with him. And so I'm not worried about that. I told him not to worry about that. I said, first of all, this is a lot of emotions. It's probably not going to go in the way that it looks or the way that they threaten because we're actually quite emotionally stable, me and him. So I did warn him. I said, in order to get these conflict cycles out, I'm going to have to be straight up with them. And there are going to be some times that I'm going to raise my voice a little bit to make sure that I am heard. And they're going to do all sorts of things. Now, here's the thing that is amusing, right? So they're in the church parking lot. They could come to their house at any point in time. It's their house. I'm not blocking it. I'm not doing anything to it. I'm not like, I never was like, I'm going to go be a pirate around your house. They don't want to come back here because then they have to think about things. Like, and so my dad, instead of just saying, I mean, he could go back to his normal thing, just ignore it, right? But he knows that I'm not going to let it go just because they give me money or just because they say that everything's my fault. In fact, if it is my fault, then why not just earn it, right? So it's funny because it's not even earning it. Like telling you the truth about what has happened and asking for acknowledgement, that's not being like you. The reason you don't like it is it's the opposite of how you've been. But he'll be in like a parking spot and he'll like pull forward to see if the van is still out front and then pull back. And then at one point he came and drove up and drove around, like sped around the cul-de-sac. I wasn't even looking. I knew it was them, but I just kept doing my own thing because I am not playing that game. I said my piece. I will keep saying my piece. If you don't like it, grow. Just like you've demanded of me. You know, find gratitude, find accountability, find faith. Recognize that everybody has a part. And that if you're not going to be in that space where everybody, including you, has a part, I'm not going to give you the benefit of my empathy in knowing that, not my empathy, my sympathy in how your life has been. Because you're not giving what you ask for. And according to up-to-date psychology and what everybody else says, when people don't meet your conditions for love and affection and appreciation, you take it away, which is exactly how my parents have been. And it's like, what really gets me is how many simple, kind ways that I have brought some of this stuff up. And half the time, not even for me, for them, because they constantly complain about how people treat them. So I go to bat for them in kind, simple ways. And now that we're here, when Wickedly Divine Feminine is being direct, I'm not even being mean. I'm just being direct. I'm owning my own feelings, my own parts in all things, and I'm requiring that anyone who wants to interact with me do the same. Those are simple conditions, yes. Anyways, so he came up and he drove around real fast and then drove away real fast. I'm not even sure, like, what is that supposed to do to me? Like, am I supposed to be mad that they're not coming to their own house? They used to like to make fun of my youngest because when he would be upset that, like, I'd say, no, you can't have extra dessert until you clean your room. Something like that, right? A reasonable thing. And he'd be upset. And he'd tell my mom, well, I'm not going to eat my dinner. That'll show her. And she would sit there and be like, well, Jost, that's only going to hurt you because you're going to be hungry. And what's interesting is, like, this is that same scenario. You're only hurting yourselves by not acknowledging things. You're only hurting yourselves by not coming to the house. It's your house. You do what you want in it, just like you've always done. It's full of hoarded shit that you wanted to put in there and don't allow anyone to clean and blame everyone else for. It's full of your stuff, your life, your things. Do what you want with it. At this point, I'm surprised I haven't heard get the fuck out. Like, why are we doing this? Well, and is you being passive aggressive supposed to make me more unstable? Because I'm here in this space where I can talk to y'all about this because I went through the work in therapy and in personal journeys and in everything else to be emotionally stable, regardless of the instability of people around me. Because that's what a healthy mom needs to do to be a healthy mom for her kids, right? Same with dads. Anyways, so then they drove off, and then I watched them pull back into the church parking lot and park at another spot. You know what kind of makes me giggle the most? You remember the reason he feels like the car broke? Because I was idling in it. What do you think he's doing right now while he's sitting there complaining, talking, getting all fucking extreme about shit that really never needed to go to that place, that never should have need to go to a place where a person would raise their voice to say, hey, you are not listening to me. You are not respecting me. And then it's like, okay, like, are you hurting me right now? Like, are you trying to hurt me? Like, I've had so many people over my life that, like, I've focused on me. I've stayed in my own lane. I've worked on my stuff with my kids, and they want to do all sorts of stuff to, like, get my attention. My mom is a favorite example. When our youngest was here, when she was upset that I was not giving her enough attention, her sister wasn't, or her mom, or her husband, my dad, wasn't giving her attention, she would go and pick a fight with my 10-year-old. And her favorite way to do it, even if his space was completely clean and just fine. In fact, if his space was clean, just the way that she demands that it always be, because we might have guests, because so many people want to come over and hang out with people like this, right? She would go and find something that she knew was important to him, a video game controller, a toy, something. And she would pick a reason to make up for why he had misbehaved and put that toy out of sight and above where he could not get it, so that he got unstable, and it would bring me back in the house. What I don't get, though, is I never let her win in those situations. In the past, I would have my kids be quiet and polite because she's older and because it's their house. Though about a year and a half ago, I started saying no. And you know what that resulted in? My family attacking me. I actually had a friend on the phone with me while my aunt was attacking me. 4 hours. You know why? Because there was one day, I think I mentioned this in one of my other videos. There was a day that my youngest called me on the phone. I was working, and he asked if I could come pick him up to go to the park. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I can do that. He asked me if he could wait in the driveway. The driveway is really big and open. It was the middle of the day. It's a gravel driveway, and my sight is pretty darn good. That's part of why I like doing delivery work, right? So then I'm on my way, and I get another call from my youngest saying that grandma and his aunt and others are trying to pick fights with him. Even he can see it, and he's not sure why. And I said, it's okay. You stay outside. I'm like 2 minutes away. And I get there, and he said, can I wait in the car? And I said, yeah, whatever it is, you can wait in the car. And I went inside, and they were mad. And I said, these are my children, okay? I'm going to raise them the way that I feel is fit to raise them. And because of the way that you guys have been with me all my life and that you continue to do with them, I have already told you and them that they only need to get permission from me. I would like it to be different. I would like it to be, the whole village thing, though y'all don't want to own where you're at. So I'm saying this very clearly, stop picking on my kids. And my mom tried to say something, and then my aunt came in and started screaming at me about how, what are they wanted to know, how do they discipline my children when they misbehave? And I said, you don't. That has never been your job. It's never been your responsibility, and it's never going to be. It is mine. They said, well, you don't do it. I said, you mean that I don't do it when you think it should be done? And they said, well, look at this now. He went outside, and he didn't tell us, and he was in the driveway. I said, first of all, what's wrong with him going outside? And they said, well, and I said, second of all, he called me. He asked me for permission. I am the only one he needs to get permission from. Well, you could have run him over. I said, that's really extreme. Yeah, like I'm just going to speed away into the driveway and not see my 7-year-old, who's very tall for his age, usually wearing bright colors. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And just because you're using extremism like that doesn't mean I'm going to give in to you or punish them for stuff that is quite frankly your problem, not theirs. And my aunt got super upset. Like, I went outside just to sit in the car and talk to my friend and process and just be like, enough. Like, I even told my mom, I said, look, I put a point system up on the wall. Y'all keep taking it down because you don't want to do it that way. Because you would rather do passive aggressive games and take things away and do stuff like that. The point system that I have works quite well. I even worked it out with my therapist, right? But you don't like that. And I am not responsible for the fact that you do not like that. And she started coming out, and like it was, I kid you not, it was like every 15 minutes she would come out and yell at me about what a bitch I am and how everything is my fault, including all of her problems and stuff like that. Mostly I just kept quiet. I just didn't look at her, nothing. Made her more mad. Then she started trying to come at me, and I got up and walked away. I went to go pick up cigarette butts because that's my thing. That's my mess. I leave cigarette butts around. Yep. And so I went to do that. She started coming out at me again. And then I went over to my RV to sit down and cool off with my friend on the phone who's telling me to be careful or telling me to be calm because, a lot of the other thing that happened that same day too was that my aunt had been interfering with stuff with my kids and their dad. And their dad was drinking heavily at the time. He had already driven drunk once with them in the car. And so I said, no, this was Father's Day 2020. I said, no, until he is in a place where I can trust that he is going to be safe with them, no. And she got mad and saying, well, I already promised that I'd take the kids to see him. And I said, that's unfortunate for you. You made a promise before you got my consent as their mother. Well, do I have to ask permission for everything about them? I said, at this point, yes, you do. And then, more attacking. And then she wanted to come out and yell, well, you'll have to feed them yourself. I said, that's fine. I'm perfectly capable of it. Just because you guys jump in and micromanage everything doesn't mean that I'm not capable of it. Well, you're going to have to watch them. Yeah, that's fine too. I usually do that. Y'all are the ones that get all upset and act like I'm not doing it right because it's not your way. But my kids like my way, okay? I trust them. We have respect for each other. It's safe for them to be mad at me or to communicate any of these feelings. I never yell at them when they're upset with me. I stop and go, okay. I want to think about what I'm doing because sometimes there are times when we need to help our kids with something and they're not going to be very fond with it. But in my opinion, you never have to be in a place where you're like, well, you just have to get over it, or I'm the mom, I'm the boss, or life ain't fair. No, you could actually stop and talk to your kids. And yeah, they might not be at an age where they're necessarily able to fully comprehend some things at that time, but it's a lot better to make the attempt to actually talk with them and find a way to communicate in ways that they can understand than to get mad that they can't understand and blame them for why you don't explain things and then rule by iron fist. And so at this point, with my dad doing his passive aggressive dance with the car as if that's supposed to do something to me, I have no idea what they're going to do next. So I might be doing more videos just to basically rant, because if they want to decide to come at me, I would rather have it on video at this point. Like, because I'm just in love so much with everybody doing these things, and then there's never evidence of it. It's hearsay. And then you got a whole bunch of bullshit and no way to prove it. And then they can keep doing that. And I'm not going to do that anymore. If you're going to mistreat me, well, guess what? I'm going to at least document it so that I know I'm not crazy. Which I already know that I'm not, because this has been a coping mechanism that I've kind of had to do for a long time. I just didn't have the spaces to really put it up. And then we can get into the other fun that I have pretty much disheveled my Facebook in terms of friends. Because a lot of the friends that I had, I mean, this is, we're not talking about just an occasional challenge. We're not talking about sometimes they do this. I'm talking about they often do this, to where they'll talk about how unfair the world is and how they've got all these problems going on. And then when they're asked for even just their consciousness, their conscious attention to something, they can't. And most of the time, because they don't believe anybody, because they don't have any trust, because they say the life is unfair and the world is cruel and all that shit. And I had a lot of empathy for that. I had a lot of space for that for a long time, but the truth is I've always felt that we are all a part of all problems. All of us. I'm not excluded from that. I'm included in that. And then I decided, you know what? The textbook healthy example of emotional security and the definition of what everybody, whether they're emotionally secure or not, tells me to do when people don't act in healthy ways with me or meet my conditions, and I decided to unfriend them, right? Both, I mean, at first it was just on Facebook. Like, I don't want to see your complaining posts. I don't want to see your pictures of a fake happy family. I don't want to see it. And I don't need to. Because, there's a fair amount of them that, yeah, once upon a time they may have helped me in the sense that they let me talk out my feelings with them. Or they may have joined me in some business venture. Most of them, which then left it and it crumbled. So, like, there hasn't really been a lot of help. A lot of these people have not reached out to me over the years, even if I've reached out to them. I can remember how many times that I have messaged people that I thought that I had built a good friendship with, or texted and done stuff like that, and either there was no answer or they were constantly busy. Or I talked too much, or I loved too much, or things like that, And I'm thinking, okay, let's see what I've learned through therapy and my nerdy love of psychology and spiritual healing. And what I realized is, like, to hold on to people because once upon a time they helped you or were kind to you or things like that, it's very codependent. A healthy person should be able to release any connections that are no longer stable and healthy, right? I'm not saying that a healthy person, like, just cuts everybody off, clean off, but sometimes you do got to start over like that. Sometimes you got to acknowledge that people might not be wrong. Maybe you have had too big of a heart and you have put your heart into people that do not feel the same and do not reciprocate. Doesn't mean that they can't. I'm never going to be the kind of person that's like, everybody's broken. I don't live in the aisle of the broken. That's part of why I'm willing to detach myself and release myself from a lot of these connections, because actually I'm fully aware of what that will do, or at least the likely timelines of what that will do, because nobody expects it from me. I'm usually that quiet, kind person that talks too much, that everybody likes to make fun of and not include in all the fun stuff or anything like that. And I'm always the person that, it's okay. It's okay not to reach out to me, because people aren't wrong. I am capable of taking care of myself emotionally. My problem was in the past was not taking care of myself emotionally. It was never asking for help, or waiting until it was an absolute crisis to ask for help. Because the way that the world tends to work is, unless you are in dire need and there's no possible corrupt government systems that you could possibly get lost in, they won't help. They don't even want to think about it. And in my position, it's especially interesting because I am a woman talking about how people are abusing me. Most people don't believe me. Then, on top of that, I'm talking about how people are being abusive to the guy that I love, whether he's in relationship with me or not, whether he's being perfectly meeting my conditions or not with my two sons. And most of the same people don't want to help because that might unravel some of the Me Too movement thoughts that men are to blame for all our problems, which has never been true. Yes, the patriarchy fucking sucks. But guess what? We are all a part of all problems. If men have been shitting on women, we have to own that women have been their mothers, have been their sisters, have been their lovers. Men are not just born out of the fucking womb as abusive or patronizing or cynical or powerful. Yes, there is a system that so far supports men a heck of a lot more than women, especially white men. I'm not saying any of that is not true. I have yet to have invalidated anybody's truths. All I've been doing is saying, it's you too. Yeah, it's me too, but it's you too. And none of the problems that we're going to complain about that men bring in or men perpetuate and shit are going to get better while we're doing the same shit as them. Blaming everybody else, not taking accountability, right? So here I sit, looking at my battery getting low, kind of amused at the way that life is going at this point. Because the greatest irony is that actually I feel quite emotionally stable. Because when you're healthy, your emotions flow. You don't sit in mad feelings. You don't sit in sad feelings. You don't stay in a place where you're just bitter about everything. Because when you're emotionally healthy, you're able to recognize, yeah, I get that my parents are going through loops of things that have been stuck in them and been unchallenged for decades, multiple decades. I get that. That's why I can have momentary experiences of being upset or mad at them for things they do in the moment that are disrespectful to themselves, to me, and my children, and still love them. That's why I can still love them and hold healthy boundaries. Same thing with everybody else. Everyone else who's mad at me. I have a few people that probably want to take me to court because they're mad at me because I said, you too. You too, and you too, and you too, and you too. And guess what? Just like you say that you just listen to everybody else, well, I listen to you. I listen to you too. You said if people are not acting in accordance with my conditions or what healthy emotional stability is, that I'm supposed to be cold and cruel to them. And then I'm supposed to do like you do and tell the world about how I've been put upon. It's interesting because I was talking with a friend the other day about how many people will give you advice. And when you're not taking it, they get on you about how you're not taking their advice. And then you take their advice. And usually, they must be included in that. Otherwise, you're being a hypocrite and you're not really being healthy, are you? And it don't matter whether you release those people in a kind way, in a quiet way, whether you ghost them or whether you call them in about why you're letting them go. And they still get mad that you took their advice because it included them too. And the irony is, I'm not mad about anybody. In fact, I know that if my presence mattered enough, that it matters this much, when I pull in for me and say, enough of everybody treating me this way as either insignificant or the blame, or that they just can't help me because all of their life problems that have continued on and on and on over in cycles haven't gone away yet. Well, that doesn't mean my conditions anymore, you know? My conditions for people that get immense gratitude and delight and fun from me are that you offer pretty similar to the same. That you be a real human. That you trust that I am a safe place when you want to have emotions and you ask my consent before you emotionally dump on me. That you communicate clear boundaries and you check in with mine here and there. just like I do for other people. That when I reach out and I say, I could really use to talk to you, have space, you don't just leave the message blank. When I say, hey, we need to work on this thing because as adults we're being really shitty examples to the kids around us, you don't then go, I'm too busy. I have too many problems. It is their fault. No. You can be that way. I don't need to control anybody. I've worked on releasing control a lot. Though I also don't need to look at your fake posts. And I don't need to look at how you pretend that you're upholding equality and movements and all this stuff when I know you personally and I know you're not. Not in your mind anyways, not in your heart space. My conditions for giving my too big heart to anyone, whether it be a friend or a family member or anything, is that it be a safe place for me to trust you and for me to be able to share my big heart with you because I should no longer have to be smaller because you want to be small. Because me being me makes you uncomfortable. I know that there are places in this world where my bigness, where my big heart and all that are more than welcome. So I don't need to be in a place of black where, like, oh no, you're going to be mad at me. I don't. You know how good that feels? Because I was not in that place for a very long time. And now I am. And it's like, people are mad at me. I mean, that's okay. I'm not fond of that, but they were mad at me anyways before I actually even said anything. So, I mean, it's going to be that way either way for a little bit. If people are going to use me as their scapegoat or are going to emotionally dump on me as if my consent doesn't fucking matter, well, then I'm not going to hurt myself over that anymore. Not that I ever really did, but when I say that, what I mean is emotionally get like bound up at the fact that they're mad at me when I know I didn't do anything wrong, or when if I did do something wrong, they didn't communicate it to me directly and respectfully, and so did not give me the opportunity to be able to address it, which is another very toxic thing that primarily women do. I'm not saying men don't do it. And I'm really tired of people that when I talk about how women can also be just as toxic, that they go, well, but men, but men, but men, you're excluding men. No, I'm not. It's the same thing as being a minarchist and calling in people who are Democratic, Republican, and Libertarian, and Socialist, and all of those spaces, which I also hold space for because I appreciate all ideologies. That's why I like minarchy, because it has space for everybody. Though they'll get mad and say, well, you're not thinking about my side when you're speaking those truths that I hear the other side say, so you must be just like them. And it's like, how about instead of investing my time in saying, no, I am including your side. I'm just not giving the extra time to throw in all those extra words for every fragile heart, just like is not done for me. And I think that that's a pretty healthy thing to do, is to say, I'm going to speak my piece. And if the people around me feel like I need to change my words so they feel more comfortable, well, then I'm just going to acknowledge that that's not a compatible friendship for either of us. They want people who are going to be responsible for their emotions. I want to be responsible for my own emotions and have people around me who are responsible for their own emotions. That's what textbook psychology says is the healthiest thing. Why not? The world is going to be cold and cruel anyways. I might as well at least go with what the collective feels like is the appropriate thing, especially considering that's everyone's advice. And if I should take a different route to support my too big heart, because everyone else has gone cold and cruel in this world, oh no, then I'm going to hear about how I did not take those people's advice. So why not take it? There are times in life when, yes, sometimes you speak up. Sometimes you do the impolite thing. Sometimes you do the tit for tat thing. I'm hoping that this world shifts into New Earth pretty quick because it's not the games that I like to play. I'd prefer to play Parcheesi. I'd prefer to play Scrabble. I'd prefer to go out into the woods and build shrines and altars to random deities that we just made up. I'd prefer to play the game of saying, how much goodness did you do today? Look at you. You worked on you. Look at your boundaries. You're doing real great today. I'd rather play the game of, what are you grateful for? I don't want to play the game of, well, you said and da 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 da, and so I'm just going to do the da 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 da. That's the games that everyone else plays. And the irony is, I don't know if it's a part of my purpose on this earth or not, but it's always when I finally say, you know what, I'm going to give the people what they want. When I do it, it changes shit. People learn things, people look at themselves, people step back. Some of them just get really, really pissy and then dishevel their own lives because of it. But most people, when they calm down, realize that I'm correct. And usually they come back and apologize. And that doesn't always fix things. It'd be nice if it did. Usually it's the changes that come with it. The most people, whether they ever talk to me again or not, when I mirror the way that they behave with me or the things they say about me that they don't think I know about and point out they're doing all those things, usually they take the time to look at their shadows and then they correct them. And I know this about me. So whether it's my own family or people that I've known for ages or anything, I know that somehow I have this power that if I allow you to be mad at me and I mirror the way that you are behaving, you'll get benefit out of that. I don't need anything out of it beyond that. It makes me feel good to know that whether I'm being bold and beautiful and kind, or not even, I'm not even being unkind, but if I'm being nice, I know that that does a lot for people. And I know that when the point comes that it's time to release them, whether I do it kindly or I do it in my own immature ways, that they go and create better lives for themselves because of that interaction with me. Kind of the way that it's always been. I'm looking forward to having more people that I don't necessarily need to release, though. I'm no longer afraid of endings, you know? Not in terms of relationships. I enjoy having a friendship for a few weeks just as much as I enjoy having one for a few years, and I really like that I'm no longer sitting in this constant state of stress because who can I talk to, or where can I go, or oh my gosh, poor me, my friends aren't there for me, or who's a real friend, or people aren't loving me. Like, I can love myself. And I certainly am not going to become extreme and be like, I can do everything myself. That's toxic independence. No, I need assistance too. And I like to ask for help sometimes, not only because then I can acknowledge that I've grown in that way of never asking for help until it was an incredible mess. And also, I recognize that other people like to feel helpful. So it's not just about me. That's the kind of person that I am. I don't just do things for me, regardless of whether anyone believes that or not. It's kind of interesting, especially if you've watched any of my other videos of recently, that it's like, in many ways, I feel like the person who exists but does not. Like, yes, I'm here in a physical being, but because most of the world is so jaded and so bitter and so worried about what everybody else thinks, they project when they look at me. They don't see me. I'm not allowed to be a person that can both call you in about your behavior and give a fuck about you. I'm not the kind of person that could be very intelligent and actually be very healthy emotionally and be in love with someone who is not those things and see that he is a good person still and would have a beautiful, beautiful life for himself, choosing for himself if other people were not so fucking cruel in the world. I can do both. You know what I mean? And even of that, like even with my family, like apparently I'm supposed to be the blame for all things. But when I actually say, fine, blame me for all things, and I'm going to show you how I feel about that, then all of a sudden, we don't blame you for all things. And you know what? I can't even say that. They've never said that. Never, ever. Never, ever when I have said, you blame me for all things, have they either gone, no, we don't, or we don't do that, or we appreciate you for this and this and this and this. No, never, never. Gotta love the confirmations in there, right? Kind of a same similar thing even with Rudy's family is like, no, we appreciate you for what you've done. No, you know what? We see that you are definitely a good person. We're gonna help you because we know that you're smart and intelligent and you don't have ulterior motives. No. And then when I say, you know what, I know that you're talking shit about me, and I know that you're talking shit about your own brother, and that you're using the kids to do your pirating and feel better, then it's, oh, but look what you've done. And I'm like, yeah, I did do that stuff. And it's actually because of the way that y'all have continued that I learned to stop doing that stuff and make healthier choices. Then all of a sudden, oh boy, I'm just unstable. Yeah. if that's what unstable people want to clarify as unstable, you can have it. Like, either way, though, it's definitely one of those, like, I know that spirit has already, like, I've already got new people coming into my life. Like, I knew it was going to happen before I released people. That's why I was emotionally secure enough to do it. And I could have done it the whole time, but there was a part of me that was still holding on to the old codependent thing. But they're family. But they helped me one time. They might, possibly, there's potential that they might stop being cowards and own their shit and actually be good to everyone, including themselves. Right? Then you know what they say? You should not stay connected to people based on potential, right? Especially if they're not accessing that potential, if they're not working towards that potential. Yeah? So, here we sit a little bit before I gotta go get my oldest. My phone's about to die, so I'm gonna get off of here though. But here we sit. Those of you who decided to watch for whatever reason, I don't know if this is bringing you some sort of satisfaction or entertainment, or I know some of you that are going to watch it are looking for my weaknesses when it's like, hey, they're all over, baby. I don't hide my weaknesses any more than I hide my strengths, you know? And I'm not afraid to stand up for what I'm passionate for. I'm not afraid to speak my piece. Because I know for everyone if I do. Benevolently. Because when we get emotionally constipated and we don't tell people how we feel, that's when we have these, drama cycles where we end up blowing up on people and saying crazy shit. you know? And then makes it a little bit more challenging to come back from there. Though the irony is, if you simply go, you know what? I was upset. And I said some things that I did not mean to that extreme. And I recognize that we got into this situation together. And that I'd like to come back and say, I'm sorry for my part. And not be in a place where you're only saying that under the assumption that they're going to give you their immediate forgiveness. You know that fight I was talking about earlier where my aunt was attacking me? She got to the point where I was sitting in my RV door and she started coming up into my space to try to touch me. I was on the phone with a friend. I waited until she was going to touch me and stood up and roared at her like a motherfucking lioness to get the fuck away from me, that this was the most incredibly immature thing and that it was abusive. She started yelling at me again. And I said, I don't care. I've been trying to avoid your abuse and you keep attacking me. And so she walked out. That's when my mom saw it. Did my mom say, oh, I'm sorry you got treated that way? No. No, because you know what? My mom blames me. Even if it was not me doing all that stuff. Even if all I actually did was ask my family not to enable my kid's dad in being an alcoholic for a time. That's all I did. But then she came back out hours later to say, oh, well, I'm sorry. And I just looked at her and I said, okay. She said, well, aren't you going to forgive me? Not currently, not with that attitude. And she stormed off. And we never had that conversation again because there was never any show of actual evolution, actual growth, which, healthy psychology, you don't give your too big heart to somebody that is not actually putting in the inner work. Sorries are nice in words, though it's really the actions. That's part of what makes me laugh with people that go, how can you still love Rudy? Well, he's never been great with words. A lot of men aren't, because we women are just as abusive most of the time, and then we create abusive men. Okay? We create men that are afraid to ever show any emotions. We create men who are afraid to actually speak their minds because we might use it against them later. But you know what I have seen from Rudy? I've seen a lot of actions that go together with his words that show me that despite the incredible, almost insurmountable shit around him, that he is growing. And that to me, not only is that a beautiful apology, but it's a beautiful sign that I am correct, that people in this world can grow, especially the people that I love, despite what they do in the 3D, despite what I get out of it or don't get out of it. And I love that. And that's why I can show him love and appreciation even if he's talking shit about me to save his own ass. In fact, I'm fairly confident he's not doing that, though I know him. There are moments when he likely has, and that's okay because I get it. I get what he's surrounded with. I get why we're on the journey that we're on. And he's got 20 years of being good to me for the most part. Yes, there are moments that it was not good. Why do you think I called for the separation? But most of that was because he was doing what I was doing. He was being codependent to pirates who don't give a shit. They say they do. They'll cry at you and say, "Oh, but I do care. Look at all I've done for you." In the middle of a conversation where you're talking about how they are being selfish and cold. He's not done that to me. So why wouldn't I still appreciate him? Why wouldn't I? You know? And he's probably one of the only people that's actually seen my actual shadowy emotions, and he still held space for it. There's been very few times that I've actually had an emotional outburst with him that turned into him just blaming me. In fact, he would be the first person that, yeah, we might have a fight. He might get reactive. There might be some stuff in there, but he'd be the first person to come back and say, you know what? Well, I'm not taking it all on me. I acknowledge that you're right, and I'm going to work on this. And the only thing that ever stopped him is when he talked with other people about growing in that way, they told him he was a pussy or that I might end up being like his ex-wife. And then they would get all victimy because he wouldn't give them his money, or they wouldn't give him all his time, or they weren't listening to him and they were telling him, you're going to get hurt. There's a reason that I can still be appreciative of him and still release everyone else with love for equal ownership in all of these problems. Whether it be my family, whether it be his family, whether it be my friends or his friends, whether it be the system, whether it be anybody, rich, poor, powerful, held in high esteem, sick, healthy, whatever. This is the way that the world wants to be, yes? I don't think it really is. And in fact, I look forward to seeing it shift through this. Because whether anybody wants to believe that a person like me exists or not, I know that I exist. And I know my power. And part of my power is in being able to lovingly release people with direct, clear communication about why I'm doing it. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to my rant and my prayers and my life. I'll see y'all in the next video.